How fast can somebody make $1 million in the modern day? My name is Praying for Exits, and today we're going to dive into some tips and tricks to figure out how to make your first $1 million. I'm a tech investor and entrepreneur. I've started 4 companies and have invested in over 125, and so I've seen a bunch of different ways of how people have made their first $1 million. The good news is that there are a million ways to make $1 million, especially in this day and age, and given the power of the internet and mobile and all of these things that we take for granted, it's easier than ever to figure out ways to make a lot of money very quickly. So today we're going to talk about this from the perspective if I was starting over, what I would do to basically get myself to that place. If I was starting over and I was in my late teens, early 20s, I would really focus on starting a business. While starting a business is an extremely hard thing and very difficult and time consuming, it's probably the easiest way for you to get rich by doing something that you're passionate about. What's great about the modern day, especially if you're trying to start a business, is that there's a ton of resources that you can use to learn how to start a business, what types of things to look for that will help you build a long-standing and successful business. We have a bunch of those resources on our channel, but places like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram are increasingly great places to start to find people that you look up to who have done this before you, are willing to share information on their process and how they've done things. So an example of somebody that I know who started something very successfully when they were young is I have a friend who started a mobile games company when he was around 20 years old and basically bought and sold a bunch of mobile games as they were sort of exploding on the App Store, and started to bring them all together under one umbrella where he could take economies of scale within the gaming industry and make them even more successful than they would have been individually. Right now, he's been running that business for about 12 years. He's 32 now, and his business is now worth roughly $1.5 billion. If I were looking to make money right now as a young person, what I would do is spend a ton of time on the internet trying to absorb where I see gaps in the market. And what I mean by gaps in the market is there's markets for everything, and these markets are oftentimes very inefficient. And so finding different places where you can spot these inefficiencies and somehow solve them is a great place to start. I think the most important thing about making money is not actually thinking about making money, but solving problems. And so the more problems that you can solve and the better that you can solve them for people, the more value that you are creating for them. And just a byproduct of creating a ton of value for people is that you will end up making money and people will pay you for that value that you're giving them. But I think the North Star should never be just being money hungry and trying to get as much money and accumulate as much money as possible. If you wanted to do that, the best place for you to probably spend your time is in a hedge fund or private equity, etc., where you could probably make $1 million in 2 to 3 years. But if you really wanted to be an entrepreneur and sort of build this yourself, the best thing to do is find a problem that a lot of people seem to have and figure out how much value you can provide back to people against that problem, and you will definitely be lucratively rewarded for that. So now that you have your idea, you have to figure out the best ways to distribute your solution, right? So you've identified a problem and you feel like you have a solution that'll help a bunch of people who have that problem. The next thing you need to figure out is how do I build that solution in a way that can scale, and then how do I distribute that solution in an interesting way that gets in the hands of most people possible. This can be anything from like an internet widget to a physical thing, but basically once you have the idea, you need to get people to care about that idea using interesting strategies like social media, or generally just finding different pockets on the internet where you can share your idea and get it in front of the people that it needs to get in front of is the best place to play, because there's a certain viral aspect to the internet. And so if you're doing something really interesting or unique, the internet seems to catch it and take it and sort of blow it up. And so if I were young and starting this all over, I would find interesting things that seem like they have like a naturally viral coefficient to them and figure out a way to get my product or service in front of the eyes of as many people as possible, hoping that that will convert into customers who will stay with you for a very long time and end up being very lucrative. A great example of somebody solving a problem and using the internet to sort of like virally blow it up is Liquid Death. Liquid Death is a canned water company, and you might think, why do people care about canned water? But the people who started Liquid Death noticed a gap in the market that canned water was becoming a much more interesting and acceptable thing. Most water brands are pretty boring, pretty plain, and so if you could add a little bit of more interesting branding around it, you could possibly capture a large group of people that cared about the branding and marketing of their water. And so today, Liquid Death is over $1 billion business and has grown quite large off the back of using these sort of viral tailwinds that the internet allows to grow their product very large. Making $1 million, if that's your express goal, is something that's very difficult. But what's great about living in 2024 is the fact that it's easier than ever to own and sort of distribute your own business, where your parents or your grandparents might not have necessarily had the same opportunities that you have. There's a great chance that you can create something great and get it into the hands of the people that care about it the most, which in turn would be be you providing value and having the world and your customers provide value back to you. And there you have it. If you want to make a bunch of money very quickly, this is probably the best way to go about it, in my opinion. It's something that'll take a lot of time and effort and care, but if you really put your mind to it, there's a huge chance to do something great and make a lot of money off the back of that. If you like this video, please check out some of the other videos on our channel where we dive into a bunch of tips and strategies around entrepreneurship and building companies, which will hopefully give you the best chance possible of building something great. Catch you on the next one, guys. Peace.